So now I've raced it and I've been a live spectator, so I'm even more convinced now that HYROX is a real opportunity for endurance coaches. Not just because it's trendy, but that's probably a good enough reason in itself, but because it really caters for the needs of endurance athletes. So I'm here from Training Talk. Hey, I wanted to follow up with my last blog about the case for HYROX coaching for current endurance coaches. So I really talked about things that I'll reiterate today about how the sport of HYROX really matches the goals and desires of runners and triathletes, and also a lot of the coaching matches the skills of endurance coaches. So when I wrote that post, I had entered HYROX in Auckland, and I just did it 2 weeks ago, so I wanted to follow up. So since I did that, I actually did the race, and it was awesome. Probably the most fun I've had while suffering for a long time, and I'm already plotting how to make up time on each of the stations in my next race. It's pretty addictive. So HYROX is basically 8 kilometers of running, but you split the running up with a station. So you do a 1 kilometer run, and then you do a ski erg, and then you do a 1 kilometer run, and then you do a sled push, and then you do another 1 kilometer run, and I think you do the sled pull, and then there's the farmers carries, the row, lunges, and then the wall balls. I think that covers all 8 of them. So the reason I did it, sort of part curiosity, part market research. Should I build some features into Training Talk to help my existing endurance coaches coach HYROX, and then maybe even get some HYROX specific coaches into the platform as well, because I know a lot of them are using strength-based or personal training apps to do their coaching, but of course there's a lot of running, so those apps don't really cater for running, whereas in Training Talk we've got structured workout builders, analysis about running workouts, etc. So anyway, back to the race. So most of all, it was a lot of fun. It was hard and suffering a bit, but it was short enough. I think I finished in about an hour and 24 minutes. Thought I might do 90 minutes. I thought I might do an hour and a half, so I was happy to go a bit fast. I really did. I paced myself quite well. I thought I underpaced, but I was actually pretty buggered afterwards, so maybe I paced myself quite well. And after the race, I hung around for a while actually, and I watched the mixed doubles. I got a bit of a buzz from it. The high intensity workout, short period, and not completely exhausted afterwards necessarily. Straight after the race I was, but then you recover a bit, so it's not really like an Ironman or something where you actually smash for quite a long time. So yeah, I kept watching the mixed doubles, and as a spectator it's a much easier race to keep track of the athletes you're supporting, or any athletes that you just see racing and you want to follow them. See, you can keep track of the people who are leading the race, and it's much easier than it is like in a running race or a typical triathlon wave start. You can actually move, because there's the 8 stations, where everyone is at one time. It's not like a triathlon where there's multiple run laps and you're not sure what lap who's on or whatever. So as a spectator, it's way easier to keep track of it. You just move from station to station and then pretty much watch whoever you are supporting for their entire race, which is great as well. Depending on the course, you might not be able to see all of the run. Like in Auckland, was in an event centre and the stations are all inside, and the run was then you run around and outside the event centre. So if you were spectating, you could run out and then watch the run and then run back in. But some of them, the runs on the inside. But in terms of the stations, you can watch them do the full station, all of the stations. So that's awesome. So now I've raced it and I've been a live spectator. So I'm even more convinced now that HYROX is a real opportunity for endurance coaches. Not just because it's trendy, but that's probably a good enough reason in itself, but because it really caters for the needs of endurance athletes. So they want a clear goal. So that's the race day, It's really easy to estimate what your time might be, much easier than running a triathlon. They want to race with structure, so you've got the 8 stations, you've got the runs, it's very predictable. They want to feel capable and empowered. The stations are not super technical. I mean, sure, to get awesome at them, you need to be really technical, but to actually just complete and even compete, it's not that technical, so you can do that quite easily. They want community and accountability. There's a massive community in HYROX. Everyone is cheering each other on. There's so many blogs and podcasts and all sorts of things happening now. Because it's come out of a traditional like group training, like hybrid training, everyone has their own little group that they go to the race with and they cheer each other on. It's actually really awesome to see all of the groups of people there. And they want to keep their endurance identity intact. They don't want to just go do something else. They want to still be an endurance athlete, and because it's an endurance-based sport for a big part of it, they can keep doing that. So this is not really a race report about my race, but I did learn quite a few things. So I think hopefully it's more of like a practical coach's debrief. What surprised me, what I think matters, and how you can coach HYROX without turning your coaching business into a pseudo gym. So here's the short version if you don't want to listen to the whole thing. Why athletes love HYROX. It's simple and standardized, so the same format everywhere, easy to understand, easy to benchmark, which I think is really important. It feels endurance native, so paced, repeatable, and it rewards discipline and grit. It's measurable. Running splits plus the station times make progress really obvious, which then makes that addictive. It adds strength without being overly technical, so accessible movements, less of a skill barrier than something like CrossFit. It's sociable and watchable, so the event energy is awesome. It's easy for friends and partners to follow, and there's a big, strong community vibe, which is really fun. It scratches the new challenge itch, so something competitive when triathlon or running feels a bit far away, maybe the season's off, or maybe people just get a bit burnt out from triathlon. A lot of the triathletes that I was talking to that were doing HYROX were saying that they're just a little bit burnt out on triathlon, so this is a bit more of a change. They might go back to triathlon later or something. So that's why it's good. That's why athletes love it. It's really obvious. Once you do one, or once you start training for one, it becomes really obvious. But why is it good for your coaching business? So retention plus lifetime value, LTV. So a winter off-season target that keeps athletes engaged throughout the whole year and paying you throughout the whole year, increasing that lifetime value of your customers. And it protects the relationship. So if you don't coach it, they'll do it anyway. They're not going to not do HYROX just because you don't coach it. They'll go to a HYROX gym maybe for 8 to 16 weeks or something, and that leads on to continuity. If you can control the HYROX block and the return to endurance transition, then they'll be more likely to stay with you if they do come back to endurance. Differentiation, you can create like an endurance first hybrid coaching offering. So that's a stronger position than just swim, bike, run coaching, and it's also a stronger position to come from than say your traditional personal trainer who doesn't probably do much endurance-based coaching. So you can really bring your skills into that and mix it up with a bit of strength-based. So you can add new revenue streams, so it's easy to package up as an 8 to 12 week block, for example, or a seasonal program, or some sort of hybrid online membership community or something like that. It's a lead generation pipeline, so HYROX athletes often graduate into endurance goals as well, so they can come back the other way. Endurance athletes can go to HYROX, strength-based athletes or people who just go to the gym can get into HYROX and then get addicted to the running. So that's exactly where you can shine as an endurance coach. You can upgrade your own strength coaching. So HYROX give athletes a clear reason to buy into strength training, and you a clear reason to buy into it as well and upskill yourself on it. Sound interesting? Okay, well then maybe keep listening. So my biggest takeaways, HYROX is really running but compromised. So it sort of looks like 8 kilometers with some gym stuff, but from the inside it feels more like a repeated cycle of settle into a run rhythm, hit a station, your heart rate super spikes, and then you get muscle fatigue really quickly, and then you try to run well again on compromised legs, and then you repeat again until you start bargaining with yourself to slow down. So that's basically the whole game. It's not strength in the traditional sense, it's strength, endurance, and efficiency and pacing under fatigue. So that's exactly what endurance athletes are getting hooked on. So it's measurable, it's paced, and it rewards the traits that they already respect, like discipline, repeatability, and of course the ability to suffer, but in a controlled way. What surprised me most, so I guess it shouldn't have really surprised me, but it's not just the stations that hurt, it's how they change how you run. So I initially thought I was under pacing about halfway through. I was trying to make the runs and even the two erg stations a rest to bring my heart rate down. So I thought I underpaced, but in reality, when I think back on it, I probably needed that lower pace because I was pretty buggered at the end. So every station leaves a slightly different signature on your fatigue. So your legs feel heavy, your stride shortens. The lunges, that's probably the worst, maybe because it's near the end, but also it's a long station and it takes a lot of effort, and probably I wasn't that well conditioned for the lunges. So yeah, my hips and quads lit up, and then after that there's a real danger of losing your running form and collapsing on the last run if you haven't built that resilience from that station. The farmer's carry, so that's a quick station, a real quick station. That's only 2 minutes. Well, it took me 2 minutes. A lot of people do it under, the elites do it under a minute, I think. And then, anything 1:30 to 3 minutes, I think, is a decent time. So grip is important. I've got a reasonably strong grip, so I could do the whole station without stopping and putting the weights down, but you can stop and put the weights down. So the faster that you can do it, if you don't have that grip strength, the better really, because then you won't need to stop. But so grip's important, but also posture, being able to hold that posture, either walking or sort of like half walk jogging, or if you're an elite, sort of like almost running. It makes it harder to breathe smoothly. It's hard to keep your shoulders back. The weights are trying to pull you forward and slumping you. But the surprising thing about this station is the run directly after the station actually felt easy, because I was sort of almost running, except I had the 48 kilos. So then as soon as I put those down and started running for the 1K run, it felt easy, so that was quite cool. The wall balls, so that's the last station, and you can do that station really fast. So my heart rate just flew from there on. But it was good, and by that time you're really fatigued. So even the wall balls is about pacing. There's 100 wall balls, so you have to do a lot. So it is difficult. So for coaches, HYROX is less about can you run 8 kilometers and more about can you repeatedly return to good running form and pace after localized effort and fatigue. So that's not something that most triathlon and run programs train explicitly, but it sort of is relatable to programming runs and off the bike, so running on fatigue legs and that way, but you probably just need to do more repeated things like that in your coaching as opposed to like a bike run brick. Pacing errors are brutally punished, so I saw a lot of this, people going out the gate 100%. And so HYROX encourages that in a bad way. That classic endurance mistake. I feel good early, so I'll send it. And a lot of people did send it. I could see that it was very obvious that their pace on the first run was not sustainable, and that's probably through a bit of inexperience, people coming into the sport not from an endurance base. So if you, for example, if you overcook the first 2 or 3 runs, or the ergs or the sleds are early on, they're some of the heaviest stations, or the punishing burpee broad jumps, which is somewhere in the middle, then you won't just slow down later, you'll just bleed time everywhere. So transitions, station breaks, your run posture will be messed up. You know, you might cramp. I started feeling like I was going to cramp when I was doing the lunges, so I really had to slow down on the lunges. Wasn't even sure I was going to get through them actually, but I did, and then the run wasn't too bad. And in the end, the winners aren't necessarily the strongest athletes. They're normally the ones who can pace themselves and stay evenly smooth across all of the stations. So from a coaching perspective, HYROX is an educational product and pacing. And endurance coaches are already great at teaching pacing to their athletes anyway. So the transitions and station economy are free speed. So you can, just like in triathlon, probably more so because there's 8 transitions. You know, you can make up a lot of time in entering and exiting the stations, knowing your setup, so quickly being able to get into your hand position, your cadence for various things, your breathing rhythm, and then being able to break sets strategically, not emotionally. So it's easy to go out and try and smash the sled push when maybe you should be. So the thing I didn't realize about HYROX when I started training is that you can basically stop whenever you want, put the weights down whenever you want, carry on and pace yourself that way. So breaking your sets up strategically so you don't blow yourself out is important. So for coaches, this sort of thing is a gift, so you can add a lot of value quickly. Coaching the process, so not just fitness programming, but actual real coaching and advice around the pacing, the processing, the strategic breaking up of these stations, etc. So what I think matters most in HYROX prep for endurance athletes, if I had to boil it down to 4 priorities: repeatable running, not peak running, no. So not how fast you can run a 10K, but how your ability to run pretty well 8 times after 8 disruptions. So key sessions like compromise running, station run, threshold intervals with short recoveries, and cadence work under fatigue. Second one, leg strength endurance, especially the knee dominant stuff. So sleds and lunges and wall balls will expose anyone who only strength trains a little bit, and that was pretty much me. You don't need to turn athletes into super lifters, but they do need progressive loading and tolerance with that leg and back strength. So things like squat patterns, split squats, step ups, high rep durability blocks, that sort of thing. Grip and trunk resilience. So you need a strong core. You need a strong grip because of the carries, the ski and the row. And the fatigue can really collapse your posture if you haven't conditioned yourself for it. So that turns into poor breathing, and then you can get into a death spiral as you go through the race. So key focus: farmers carries, dead hangs, rows for grip strength, trunk bracing under breathing demand, staying tall when tired, those sort of coaching cues. Fourth one, skill at the station. So they're not super complicated stations, but simple movements done well will make a big difference. That said, HYROX isn't complicated, but the stands are real, and mistakes are costly. So if you, for example, breaking the rules in the burpee broad jumps will cost you time. So key focuses around that: sled technique, foot position, push angles is a big thing, and patience as well, because when you first start pulling or pushing a sled, it'll feel very hard, especially if you're doing weight or race weight or overweight. Wall ball rhythm and set management. So rhythm's a really important thing for the wall balls, and the set management. So you probably won't be doing 100 unbroken when you're doing your first HYROX, because they are difficult. So figuring out the rhythm and how many you want, what you want to break it down to, like whether you're going to break it into 20s, or maybe a 20 and then a 10 and a 20 and a 10, or whatever works for you. Training that up in your training. Lunges with clean reps and minimal wobble. Lunges tricky. You got to get your knee right down onto the ground. And before I was training for HYROX, I don't think I'd ever done a lunge where I put my knee right down on the ground. Burpee broad jump style and pacing. So another thing I didn't realize is that the rules around the burpee broad jumps are quite loose, actually. So there are rules, but you don't need to do like a traditional straight out the back and then straight up burpee. You can just mess around with it a little bit and straight up burpee. You can just mess around with it a little bit and oops, sorry about that, I'm back. Where was I? So burpee broad jumps, yeah. So you can do various different techniques. So the burpee broad jumps that you're probably thinking of, where you do a full burpee where you kick your legs out the back, pull yourself forward into a press up, pull yourself forward and then jump forward. You can actually step back. So you can go down to a press up position, step back one leg at a time, and then step forward one leg at a time, and then do the jump. So it's actually very difficult to do a proper full burpee broad jump. The best guys do it. You see them and they actually fly through it, and that's the fastest way to do it, but it's actually really fatiguing. So I modified mine to make sure that I could get through it without getting too much fatigue, so it ended up being a lot easier than what I thought it would be. So that's important, and there's lots of things in all of the stations around that as well. Okay, so how to offer HYROX coaching without blowing up your endurance coaching business. So you don't need to become a HYROX coach, but you do need a clear product that keeps athletes in your ecosystem, since a lot of them are going to be doing HYROX. So here's a simple structure that could work. This is just an example. Offer one an HYROX add-on block, so 8 to 12 weeks for existing triathlon or running athletes who want a winter target or an off-season target, shoulder season target, whenever the HYROX races happen to be in your country. So 2 station or strength sessions per week, 2 to 4 run sessions per week, optional low impact aerobic work, bike or row, and then 1 benchmark every 2 or 3 weeks. That can be a mini simulation of some of the stations in the run. So what's the value of that to a coach? Retention plus continuity plus a potential paid upsell. Another offer could be a hybrid membership, so year-round access for athletes who love training but don't want to be like in triathlon season all year round. So rotating cycles, they could move from an endurance emphasis to a hybrid emphasis. Community touch points, so groups, station days, simulation days, challenges, etc. So a progression structure, so strength and endurance blocks. What's the coach value of that? Recurring revenue plus lower churn from your existing customers. Third offer, example offer, an on-ramp for HYROX athletes. So HYROX athletes often have the consistency and mindset already. They just lack the long-term structure for their training, and that's where you can add value. So an 8 to 12 week HYROX build, then a what's next bridge, half marathon, trail, triathlon, etc., and that'll keep them inside your ecosystem. So that could be, so this is that existing HYROX athletes you haven't coached before. So what I was talking about before, bringing in them in the other way. So not endurance athletes going to HYROX, or HYROX athletes coming to you for new coaching. So that's like a new lead generation pipeline. it doesn't rely on competing for just triathletes and runners, so that's all good. So some strategies around making sure that your brand stays clean or endurance based. So coach first positioning that keeps your brand clean. So some coaches worry about HYROX might confuse their positioning. It won't if you frame it properly, and it'll be less likely to over time as HYROX becomes more and more popular and more athletes, endurance athletes, are building it into their training and racing anyway. So you don't say we do HYROX now, you say we coach endurance athletes to get strong, stay durable and race HYROX without losing their endurance base. So it doesn't need to be that exactly, but you do need to be thinking about what are your athletes or potential customers thinking about when they're doing HYROX. Are they just like moving sports? Probably not. So they don't really want to lose their endurance base. And that enables you to keep your identity, which is around performance, progression, durability, outcomes. So those will run across HYROX or normal endurance coaching. And you're not trying to out-gym the gyms. You don't want to try and be a personal trainer. You're doing what endurance coaches do best, so that's structure, progression, pacing, continuity, etc. So what's the bottom line? Well, racing HYROX Auckland made the opportunity even clearer for me that HYROX creates a predictable fork in the road for your athletes, and a lot of them will be reaching that now as HYROX becomes more popular. Will you keep them year round with a structured HYROX block still respects their endurance base, or will they go elsewhere for 8 to 16 weeks if they want to do an HYROX race? They'll get a gym program, HYROX coach, maybe in a group format, where they'll bond with a new community, and then you just become their summer triathlon run coach that they may or may not return to. So for coaches, the upside of saying, yep, we'll do that properly is more than just being helpful. It's really a business win because of retention plus LTV. Like I mentioned before, HYROX becomes an off-season target that reduces churn and keeps athletes paying through winter or the off-season. Continuity, you control the transition back to swim, bike, run or running instead of inheriting a messy block from another coach or another training system. Differentiation, endurance first hybrid coaching. So that's a stronger position than maybe a personal trainer or a hybrid or a like an F45 trainer or something like that. New revenue streams for you, so you can add on HYROX blocks, HYROX memberships, seasonal packages. You don't need to do a full rebrand or anything like that as a HYROX coach. Creating a lead generation pipeline, so HYROX athletes often graduate into half marathons, trail running, and even triathlons, so that'll happen more and more as well as they get addicted to the endurance side of their sport. And then they will need the long-term structure that endurance coaches can offer, but their personal trainers probably can't. And then you can confidently say that, awesome, let's do this HYROX training properly. You stay in the center of your client's athletic identity, and then you can continue to build your coaching business that lasts over time as all of these trends come and go. All right, hope you enjoyed that. Let me know if you got any comments or questions. Otherwise, I'll talk to you again soon.